For years, I had a quiet crush on the young woman in the wheelchair, a feeling that guided me to care for her with a devotion that asked for nothing in return. She, however, always seemed to look down on me from a great height, her disdain a constant, chilling presence. Even when I pleaded with her to help with my father's mounting medical bills, she saw my desperation not as a genuine crisis, but as just another calculated scam to get money out of her. In the end, faced with her cold refusal, I simply vanished from her world. Several years went by before our paths crossed again. The once arrogant heiress, now standing on her own 2 feet, blocked my way, her eyes red-rimmed and full of a pain I no longer felt compelled to soothe. I found myself gently touching the cool metal of my wedding ring, a small, unconscious gesture, as I offered her a warm, detached smile. Was Clara, after all this time, really trying to interfere in my life again? A full bucket of grimy mop water suddenly cascaded over my head, soaking me to the bone, and before I could react, I was shoved into an empty classroom and heard the lock click shut behind me. I knew, with a weary sense of resignation, that they were at it again. Sure enough, a few familiar, mocking voices drifted from the other side of the door. "What now, Leo? Looks like we're all stuck in here," one of them taunted. "Might have to spend the night. Are you scared?" I sighed, not bothering to get up. "Not at all," I called back, my voice flat. "I live in a basement at home. It's pretty much the same, just like my dad, right? We're used to a dog's life." It was Julian and his usual group of friends, going through their tired old routine of torment. I wiped the dirty water from my eyes and said, with more confidence than I felt, "Clara won't let you guys get away with this." For a moment it went completely quiet outside the door, and I foolishly thought my words had actually worked, but then a soft snicker cut through the silence. A sound I knew all too well, a voice that still had the power to make me tremble. It was Clara. My father had been the house manager for Clara's family since I was 6 years old. Back then, she could still walk, and her personality was as bright and welcoming as her family's grand estate. They were incredibly wealthy and influential, but a younger Clara seemed untouched by it all, treating everyone with a humility and politeness that suggested she didn't quite grasp the vast, social chasm that separated us. The help from her world. That all changed after her mother's tragic final act. Her father, Mr. Davenport, had been having an affair, a secret that came to light along with the existence of a hidden daughter, one who was the same age as Clara. Her mother, Lillian, a woman who had built her entire world on the foundation of love and loyalty, couldn't bear the betrayal. In a desperate attempt to make Mr. Davenport regret his actions forever, she tried to take both of their lives. Lillian died in the accident, but Clara survived, forever bound to a wheelchair. That was the moment everything changed. She became acutely aware of her high status, and her words grew sharp and cruel. She looked down on everyone, especially me, the boy who continued to care for her with unwavering diligence. Mr. Davenport and his side of the family, unable to handle the new, embittered Clara, eventually moved abroad, never to return. Clara was left with the entire house to herself, a solitary queen ruling over an empty kingdom, always seemingly at war with the world. Her demanding, battle-hardened gaze finally landed on me. "Leo," she said one day, her voice dripping with condescension, "you're only kind to me because you want to escape your lowly background. Even if I'm stuck in this chair for the rest of my life, you'll always be beneath me." In her eyes, I was no different from her father's mistress, a woman who, like me, came from a place of financial struggle and had every reason to want to climb higher. Perhaps it wasn't just that, though. I had seen pictures of the woman, Isabel, and we shared a peculiar, small beauty mark at the corner of our eyes. From a certain angle, there was an undeniable, faint resemblance. Caught in the tangled aftermath of her family's implosion, I became a convenient stranger in Clara's eyes, a perfect target for all her misplaced rage. When I was finally let out of the locked classroom, Clara was sitting leisurely in her wheelchair, her lips curling into a slow, mocking smile as Julian and his friends laughed. "You asked me to teach someone a lesson," one of them said, bowing dramatically in her direction, a performance that made me feel even more like a shameless beggar. They boasted about how they had been taking care of me at school every day. Clara simply drummed her fingers on the armrest of her chair, not saying a word. The foul smell of the dirty water clung to my clothes, and the chilly autumn breeze pierced through my wet shirt, making me shiver. I stared at Clara, remembering how just that morning she had asked me to make her a cup of coffee before she left for school. Suddenly, I needed to know the full extent of her cruelty. "Did Julian tear my homework, frame me for cheating, and cut up my uniform, or was that you?" Clara's gaze shifted to Julian and his friends, who immediately took a step back, their bravado vanishing under her stare. She turned back to me, her smile unwavering. "Does it matter who did it?" she said coolly. "As long as it keeps you grounded, knowing your place. At home, she was my employer, and no matter how unreasonable her demands, I endured them. But I never imagined she would extend this calculated cruelty to our school life." Listening to the steady drip of dirty water falling from my hair onto the floor, I gazed at the girl I had cared for so diligently for so long. "Clara," I asked, my voice quiet but firm, "tell me, what did I ever do to deserve this?" She stared at my face for a long moment, as if trying to suppress something rising within her. "You were born beneath me," she finally said. "Who knows what you would do for money, what harm you might cause? Like my mother. I had heard her insults for years, but this was different. I have a face," she was implying, "like the one her father loved. If she didn't keep me firmly in my place, I might ruin someone else's life, just as Lillian had. What a noble justification, deciding the course of people's lives on a whim." I suddenly started to laugh, a hollow, bitter sound. "Clara, even if I am just like your stepmother, why should that matter to you? I'll find someone to love eventually. It's none of your business." I had never been so bold with her before. When she coldly ordered a bodyguard to toss me into a car, I knew I had finally angered her beyond her usual games. Perhaps it was calling that woman her stepmother. Covered in filth, I was driven back to her home, handed over to two maids who scrubbed me down as if I were a piece of trash, and then unceremoniously dumped in the dim, cold basement. Cold, hungry, and with no light, I curled up on the concrete floor, just as I did every time Clara had one of her outbursts, and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, as I climbed the stairs from the basement, I saw Julian, dressed in expensive, fashionable clothes, pushing Clara's wheelchair. They looked like a perfect, picturesque couple. Clara probably thought I was just saying things to hurt her. But she was wrong. Just as I had loved her in silence, never daring to speak a word of it aloud, Julian loved her openly. And everyone in their circle said they were meant to be. They had grown up together. He was her first love. I could never be that for her. After all, a princess can't love a pauper. Her idea of a love gift was $1 million watch. My idea of love was simply letting her vent her endless frustrations about a life she could no longer walk through. She never saw it, or perhaps she just never appreciated it. It didn't matter. I had always known that I didn't belong in her world, and that my father needed me most. After all these years, the job paid well. I was the only person she had chosen to be her personal caretaker. 3 years of this had provided enough money, after my tuition was paid, to see me through college. Aside from her constant dislike, I didn't really lose much. Once I graduated, I planned to leave with my dad and never look back. I buried myself in a sea of textbooks, imagining a better, quieter life for the two of us, just trying to get through that final, tough month. Right after my college entrance exams, I received a call from the hospital. That's when I found out my dad had been hiding the news of his illness from me. The doctor was quiet for a long time before he asked, "Is there anyone else in your family?" They had wanted to call earlier, but my dad had insisted they wait, telling them I was about to sit for the most important exam of my life. I looked down at the diagnosis sheet in my hand. Acute myeloid leukemia. With trembling fingers, I took out all the cash I had in my wallet and placed it on the counter. It was just enough to cover the expenses up to that point. The doctor sighed and explained that the costs for the second phase of treatment would be significantly higher. Since my mother passed away, my dad and I had moved to the city. Two drifters with no real roots, spending everything we earned just to pay off old debts. The only person I could think to ask for help was Clara. I called her, and a familiar, cold voice answered. I didn't have time to mentally prepare myself. I gritted my teeth and asked to borrow money. It was noisy on her end of the line. She chuckled coldly, sounding slightly drunk. "If you can get here in half an hour," she slurred, "I might consider it." I rushed to the exclusive club she was at, a place she now managed. As I pushed open the door to the private room, I stepped into a world where I clearly didn't belong. The room was filled with people from her social circle who immediately began sizing me up. "Is this that little house manager of yours, Clara?" one of them asked. "Not bad looking, just a bit young. A high school student?" Clara was lounging on a sofa, with Julian leaning intimately beside her, swirling a glass of wine as he glanced at me with amusement. I realized then how naive I had been. Even without the use of her legs, Clara was still the sole heir to the Davenport fortune. There would always be a line of people eager to please her. I had pitied the young woman who lost her mother and her ability to walk, and I had treated her with exceptional care because of it, but it was also unnecessary. On a crystal table in front of me, a dozen glasses were lined up, filled with amber liquid. She didn't give me a chance to speak, just lazily waved a hand toward the table. "One glass, $10,000, she said. I had a loan agreement already drafted in my pocket, but she seemed far more interested in seeing me shame myself for her entertainment. Taking a deep breath, I picked up a glass and downed the liquor in one go. My dad was waiting for me in a hospital bed. I couldn't refuse. Then came the second glass, and the third. 10 glasses down, my stomach was churning violently. I was half crouched over, dizzy and disoriented, gripping the edge of the table just to stay upright. Unbeknownst to me, at some point, Clara had kicked everyone else out of the room. It was just the two of us, with her watching me coldly from the couch. I must have looked pitiful, with tears streaming uncontrollably from my eyes from the harsh sting of the alcohol. She stood up, using crutches I hadn't noticed before, and walked over, lifting my chin with her fingers. "You really want to leave with some cash, don't you?" she sneered. I couldn't comprehend the source of her anger, only her overwhelming disdain. She tossed an envelope in my face. It held a resignation letter. "I let you into my private study, and this is what you leave for me to find. Leo, who do you think you are, trying to manipulate me this way?" Julian once told her that when a pet misbehaves, you just have to let it learn the hard way. "Since you're so eager to leave," she said, her voice like ice, "then leave today." Despite the illness clawing at my insides, I clung to her shirt sleeve. "I'm not leaving," I rasped. "I need the money. For my father. He's worked in your home for so long, and I've looked after you. Please, just help me. Or advance my salary. I'll stay. I'm sorry. I won't misbehave again." She laughed, a spiteful, ugly sound. "You're just like her. Disgusting." The alcohol was hitting me harder now. I didn't care what she said, I just kept begging. "Please help my dad." She was cruel and unmoved, as if she were laying bare some grim, fundamental truth about the futility of my life. "You don't have to make up such lousy excuses for money. I hate your greedy faces." Clara kept her word. Her assistant gave me $100,000 and then threw my belongings out onto the street. The money would cover a few months of my dad's chemotherapy. If that wasn't enough, I would have to find more on my own. I started tutoring kids during the day, but parents were hesitant to hire me without my official exam results. I showed them my school records, which proved I had consistently been in the top 5 of my class throughout high school, and eventually, after I offered to reduce my fee, they agreed. An old neighbor who used to live in our building, a man named Marcus, told me that nighttime gigs at clubs could make cash much quicker. With his help, I took on 5 tutoring jobs during the day and 2 shifts at a club at night. I became a relentless, spinning top, fueled by desperation. I kept it all hidden from my dad. Whenever he was awake, he would notice my exhaustion and ask, "How come you look so worn out?" He'd then add, "Clara's such a good kid, I watched her grow up. But how will we ever repay so much money later?" He didn't know that I had earned every single cent myself, that the money wasn't from Clara's generosity. Marcus watched my back at the club, shielding me from having to drink too much alcohol. But my stomach was still a wreck from those 10 drinks at Clara's party. It still ached weeks later. "Can't you take a break? You're going to collapse," Marcus advised. But he knew as well as I did that people like us couldn't afford to stop. He sighed, but didn't push any further, instead lending me every bit of savings he had. One night, a rich girl started visiting me at the club. Unlike the other rude customers, she just wanted to talk and take me to dinner. Maybe my luck was finally turning. "You don't need to pay it back," Marcus said one evening, handing me some medicine for my stomach. "And don't count on such little earnings daily." I swallowed the pills he bought me as tears flowed down my cheeks. It didn't matter. My dad, crippled by his illness, didn't need to know about the burdens I was carrying. I had other things on my mind anyway. "Dad," I said one day at the hospital, "the doctor recommended a bone marrow transplant. You have a sister, right?" I'd overheard stories about their fights when I was a kid, but I had never met her, knowing only that there was a deep rift between them. "Can you try to reach out? I'll talk to her. We can pay her whatever she wants." My dad looked conflicted, muttering, "She may not want the money." After much convincing, he finally agreed to try. As he stepped out of the room to make the call, I heard him murmuring into the phone, "I didn't mean that. Please, calm down." I didn't eavesdrop any further. I had another tutoring job lined up. Someone needed me to accompany their kid on a 3-day summer camp because they had no time. The pay was $1,000. For someone like me, who was desperately trying to raise money for my dad's surgery, of course I wouldn't say no. During those nights at the summer camp, I couldn't stop worrying about my dad's surgery. Would his sister agree to be a match? If she didn't, well, neither my dad nor I would force her. It was her choice, after all. We just didn't want to leave any stone unturned. Then, on the afternoon of the 3rd day, on the bus ride back from the camp, I got a call from the hospital. After his latest round of chemo, my dad had developed a severe infection. They were blunt. My dad didn't make it. In that instant, my mind went completely blank. It felt like my throat was filled with shattered glass. Just yesterday, the doctor had said he was getting better. How could this happen? I started crying right there on the bus. A 10-year-old boy sitting next to me got scared and quickly tried to wipe away my tears with his small hands. "What's wrong, big brother?" he asked. I couldn't speak through the pain in my chest. It was suffocating. I had lost my dad. I was only 17. For almost a month, I had been forcing myself to stay strong, thinking that if I just tried hard enough, I could build a future for both of us. Why did it have to turn out like this? The kid panicked and used his smartwatch to call his parents, asking them to pick me up from the bus station. They took me straight to the hospital. I thanked them quickly and rushed inside. After so much chemotherapy, my dad was just a shadow of his former self. Under the white sheet, there was hardly any sign of a grown man. A nurse helped me collect his belongings. Then came a whirlwind of arrangements and paperwork that needed to be handled, and only after it was all done did I finally realize that my dad had become just a small, heavy box in my hands. For the past month, I had watched as his illness tortured him, yet he still pretended everything was okay for my sake. For the past 17 years, he had always done that. After working so hard his entire life, my dad could finally rest, small enough to fit in the palm of my hand. I held that small box and sat alone in his empty hospital room for a long while. Then, the calls started coming in from the parents of the kids I was tutoring, all of them firing me. "You worked night shifts in that kind of place? My kid doesn't need you teaching them." Some were harsh, but sent my last week's pay. Others accused me of lying and refused to pay me at all. One even asked to meet so I could return the fees they had already paid. "I'm handling my dad's funeral right now. Do you want to come?" I asked flatly. They hung up, embarrassed. I knew it was Julian, always lurking in the shadows, ready to take pleasure in the pain of others. I couldn't reach Marcus, the neighbor who had loaned me the money. I was too exhausted with the funeral arrangements to keep trying, so I just transferred the money back to his account. The family that had brought me to the hospital had also received those anonymous photos of me working at the club, but they never questioned me about it. They visited several times, their eyes full of concern. Before their last visit, the gentle lady hugged me tenderly. "Good child," she whispered. "We're moving abroad soon." I was immensely grateful for their kindness and wished them well. After they shared a knowing look, their 10-year-old son suddenly asked, "Brother, why don't you come with us?" Before leaving, my phone rang. It was the number I had been trying to reach for a month, the one I had called for help with no luck. I answered, and Clara's voice, as cold and sharp as ever, came through. "How has your month been? Your grades are out, aren't they? I know you're good academically. Apply to my university. I'll stay here. Just be more obedient than you were before, and I'll pretend none of this ever happened." I had already shed all my tears. I couldn't help but laugh, a sound so uncontrollable and crazed that it surprised even me. Startled, Clara yelled, "Leo, what the hell is wrong with you? Say something." I honored her request with 3 simple words. "You're an idiot." They were words I had never dared to say to her before. "Leo, are you looking to get hurt?" Before her rage could fully ignite, I kept my voice steady. "My mother wrote to me, a few pages every day despite her pain. You know, she mentioned you, said you were a sensitive girl, that you found it hard to let go. How could you still be on her mind at the end?" I heard something break on the other side of the line, and Clara's breathing turned frantic and ragged. "What are you saying? He was really sick? You weren't lying? What last moment? Explain it clearly." I hung up the phone. I pulled out my SIM card, snapped it in 2, and tossed it into a nearby trash can. Then I turned and walked toward the people who were waiting for me, just as the final boarding call chimed through the airport. I saw Clara again 7 years later, at her and Julian's engagement party. A guest standing next to me handed me a handful of seeds and started chatting. "This engagement party isn't nearly as grand as that new socialites bash last month. It's one thing for the first wife's child not to be favored, but even Clara seems uninterested in her own event." I nodded politely. "Well, Julian's family is known for their desire for privacy and restraint. I simply smiled without offering any further comment. Eventually, the person noticed my silence. "Whose side are you on, anyway? The bride's?" I smiled lightly. The questioner looked surprised. "I thought only a few elders were left on the bride's side." I chuckled. "You could say I'm one of her elders, too." I didn't speak much after that, because at that moment, up on the stage, Clara suddenly looked my way. Just as I'd heard, her legs had healed. There she stood beside Julian, looking just as imperious as she always did in the past. I lifted my glass in her direction and mouthed the words, "Congratulations, wishing you lasting happiness." Predictably, she stopped me as the party was ending. In the dim hallway of the hotel, lit just enough to cast long shadows, her eyes were shadowed but clearly red. "Leo," she rasped, her voice heavy with the smell of alcohol, her breath hitting my cheek. I frowned and took a slight step back. "Long time no see, Clara," I said, keeping my tone flat, tinged with the distance of someone who was not eager for a reunion. She didn't seem to grasp the hint, though. Instead, she inched closer, her throat moving as she tried to form words. She paused. "All these years, why couldn't I find you?" I shrugged it off. "Someone of your standing shouldn't care where lesser folk end up." She reached a hand toward my face but stopped short, her eyes searching for something familiar that was no longer there. The mole she used to know, the one at the corner of my eye, I had it removed the year I left. Her hand trembled and then dropped to her side. For a moment she looked utterly defeated and drained. "You hate me, don't you?" she asked. I didn't answer. "What happened with your uncle? That was my fault. I was swamped at the time and didn't think to look into it. I honestly didn't know. It was only later that I sent someone to ask around and found out you had taken his ashes. You changed your contact info and just vanished. I searched for you for ages." If anyone else had heard her almost tearful confession, they might have been moved. But I'm Leo. The only thing that can stir my emotions after all these years is money, which Clara soon realized. I lowered my eyes and smiled. "Well, it's good Miss Davenport has a new life now. I think you'll be very happy with Julian." Upon hearing this, her hurting eyes suddenly lit up, as if a drowning person had just found a piece of driftwood. She grabbed my wrist tightly. "You still have feelings for me, don't you? Just say the word, and I won't marry Julian." I paused, and then gently laughed, pulling my hand away slowly. Even if Julian agreed, I wouldn't. Clara suddenly grabbed my hand again. I looked down, following her gaze to the simple silver band on my finger. Offhandedly, I remarked, "I'm already married." Clara was never really the gentle, cultured type. That mask might amuse her for a while, but it never lasts. I knew this all too well. The moment she saw the ring, her expression hardened. Then, hearing my resolute tone, she tightened her grip and shoved me against the wall. "To whom?" The guilt-ridden woman from moments ago was gone, replaced by her true, demanding self. Her tone was as chilling as if today were my engagement party. I tugged at my hand, but it wouldn't budge. I chuckled. "Clara, why do you ask so many questions? Are you planning to be the other woman? If I remember correctly, you used to despise those kinds of people. 7 years on, your pursuits seem to have changed." Clara's face went pale. She gradually released my hand. "Leo," she said, her voice a strained whisper. "I'm not Leo anymore," I replied, creating a distance she couldn't cross. Her gaze flickered, and her hand clenched into a fist. From the end of the hallway, Julian's voice called out her name as he approached. Seeing that I was about to leave, Clara instinctively moved to block me, but with Julian's insistent calls echoing closer, she hesitated. Finally, she asked awkwardly, "Where are you going this time?" I just smiled and reassured her, "We'll meet again." The next morning I went back to the Davenport estate, a home I hadn't set foot in for 7 years. Mr. Davenport introduced me to Clara, who was coming down the grand staircase. "This is your brother-in-law, Leo. He got married to Chloe in the States. Their flight was delayed yesterday, so he just made it for your engagement party. You two have met before, right?" Clara's pupils constricted, and she shot a sharp, disbelieving look at me. She finally understood what I had meant by "we'd meet again." Over the years, since her leg had healed, she had maneuvered carefully within the family, always fearing that Mr. Davenport might give his entire fortune to Isabel's daughter, Chloe. So now, she could sit at the same dinner table as Isabel, and even after hearing such shocking news, she remained cautious, her only betrayal of emotion being the way she gripped her soup spoon so tightly her knuckles turned white. I calmly served a bowl of soup to Isabel. She elegantly received it, glanced at it, frowned, and pushed it back toward me. "There's something in it," she said dismissively. I took the bowl without a word. "I'll get you a fresh one," I replied quickly. As I went back and forth from the kitchen, Clara sat nearby, watching as Isabel enjoyed my near-servile attention. Throughout the entire dinner, I hardly ate a bite, too busy tending to Isabel's every whim. Isabel accepted it all with an air of entitled ease, never once questioning if my almost slave-like servitude was out of place. After eating, I asked when we could leave. Isabel's face immediately soured. "Since Chloe can't be here, what's wrong with you filling in? Can't you handle a little bit of work?" Then, changing her tone to one of mock sympathy, she shrugged at Mr. Davenport and Clara and said, "He's always like this. So out of place. If Chloe didn't like him so much." Clara's gaze bore into the side of my face, almost piercing through me. I softly interrupted Isabel's rambling. "I'm just worried that others won't take care of Chloe well enough. I can't rest easy." Isabel finally fell silent, her blame evaporating. Mr. Davenport, holding her hand, gently reassured her. "This kid is just anxious about Chloe. Don't you miss her too?" Isabel's mood shifted again, and she buried her face in Mr. Davenport's shoulder, crying softly as he comforted her. Eventually, the dining room was left to just me and Clara. "You married a nobody," she laughed suddenly, then swept her entire set of tableware to the floor with a crash. In a few quick strides, she was in front of me, grabbing my hand. "How could you? How dare you? You knew I wanted those two dead." "Is that so?" I replied calmly. "You certainly didn't show it during dinner." Clara was instantly silenced, catching the sharp sarcasm in my words. I was just calmly stating the truth, that she silently appeased the very people who had caused her mother's demise. She clutched her hair in agony. "I had no choice," she whimpered. I looked her directly in the eyes. "That's why I'm not like you. I won't forgive, and I won't forget for petty gains. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Nothing less." "Being Isabel's slave, Leo," she spat. "Is this your married life? Just tending to a vegetable?" The tension mounted between us. "She's my wife, the person I love," I shot back. "I'm happy to do it." Clara stared fiercely at me for a long while, then suddenly laughed. "Leo, did you ever wonder why I despised you so much? It wasn't just because you looked like Isabel. I treated you like that because you are Isabel's son, the one she abandoned right at birth." A long-buried secret, finally dragged into the light. Clara seemed relieved after saying it. studying my reaction with the same morbid curiosity she had when she used to play cruel tricks on me as a teenager. She was waiting to see how I would take the news of my connection to Chloe. But I calmly met her gaze and replied, "I know." Her harsh, expectant eyes, which had been ready to gauge my pain, turned to fear and confusion. I continued, "It's one of the things I learned after we got married." "But something happened to her," Clara said, flustered. "You might not fully get it. Truly loving someone means you're not willing to leave them, no matter who they are or what their status is. I could wait for her to wake up forever." It sounded crazy, I knew. No one discovering their comatose wife is actually their half-sister would be as stubborn as me. But if I wasn't, how would Clara ever know just how much I loved Chloe? How would Clara go crazier than I was? Clara stared at me for a long time before sarcastically saying "good" twice and storming off in a rage. A moment later, Mr. Davenport called me. "Is it ready yet?" he asked. Watching Clara's silhouette fade away down the hall, I replied, "Almost there." Isabel suggested we all go shopping, and she even invited Julian along. The two of them seemed like mother and son, chatting away happily. Julian was charming and had Isabel wrapped around his finger. Every now and then, she would mention Chloe and me, telling Julian how Chloe had chased after me since college and had a crush on me for years. She made it sound like Chloe only went for me because I had threatened her parents. If only he had agreed sooner, Chloe wouldn't have gotten into that trouble. Honestly, he's a bad influence, but as long as he takes good care of her and knows his place, he's tolerated," Isabel said with a dismissive wave. Julian shot me a knowing look. He'd once heard her remark that he looked like some servant she had once seen. Isabel didn't buy it. "I mean, maybe they look alike," she had conceded. "But his parents are overseas. They might not be as rich as Mr. Davenport, but they'd never be house help." Julian skillfully shifted the conversation and didn't pursue it further. After the shopping trip, once Isabel had left, Julian suggested we meet up. It was at the same club where I had earned $10,000 a glass, drinking myself sick. Originally, it belonged to Clara, a gift for Julian upon their engagement. Now, in his own space, Julian didn't need to put on a show. I found him lounging on a couch, surrounded by several beautiful women. It reminded me of high school, when Clara would constantly belittle me, saying I could never match Julian's elegance. I used to like her back then, and being young and dumb, I once asked if she had learned to kiss in fancy cars from her drivers. That winter, a furious Clara dragged me into a bathroom and doused me with ice-cold water, asking if I was awake now. Julian somehow found out, and one afternoon, when I was already sick with a fever, he cornered me with some of his friends and pinned me to the concrete ground. They pressed their knees into my back, ripped my shirt, and stabbed a pen deep into my shoulder. Red blood mixed with blue ink, leaving permanent scars from the ensuing infection. I find it hard to believe that Clara was ever in the dark about any of it. So there Julian lay, his head resting in a woman's arms as he took a drink from her. He glanced my way and said, "Leo, you think losing a mole would make me not recognize you? People like you all have similar eyes." His gaze moved from the women flanking him to me. "Just seeing your eyes tells me that I can easily crush you." I held his stare. "Have you ever crushed anyone?" He seemed surprised, then pretended to contemplate the question. "I never bother to step on the ants myself. I just help others place the ants beneath their feet. Does that count?" My hand clenched tightly at my side, my nails digging into my palm, but the slight pain was nothing compared to the weight in my heart. Julian casually sipped some wine and kissed the woman beside him, his lips now stained red. Derisively, he continued, "Clara's parents fixed her leg. She owes them a lifetime of gratitude. He then turned his attention back to me, laughing. "And as for you, do you really think you've made it?" Holding the neck of the woman beside him, he continued sarcastically. "Lucky me, I got a hold of your little secret, so I thought I'd give you something in return. Isn't that the fairness you people are always talking about?" It struck me then. Julian didn't love Clara. Luxuries and power fed him, but so did cruelty. He thrived on glory, and when he was bored, he enjoyed messing with the lives of those he considered fragments beneath him. He was confident that no matter how far I climbed, I'd never surpass him. So he could mock me as he pleased. What if, from the very start, I never intended to compete with him, but aimed only to bring him down? At breakfast the next day, Isabel suggested we do a reality show together. She had broken into showbiz abroad after Mr. Davenport funded a few top movies for her, turning her into an international star. Now that things with Mr. Davenport and Clara were settling down, he wanted to move the family back home, and Isabel was looking for some local limelight. She originally wanted Julian to be on the show with her, but figured he couldn't handle it like I could. "Unlike you," she said to me, "I sometimes wonder if you were meant to serve others. Or maybe you were just well-trained. Chloe and I really hit the jackpot with you." I agreed with a faint smile. Suddenly, Clara shattered a glass, drawing Mr. Davenport's attention, though she stayed quiet. He only paused to ensure everything was set for Chloe's private jet transfer, wanting to avoid any hitches. Isabel's face lit up, and she turned to me. "You just going to stand there? Your wife is coming, remember? Surely you plan to care for her." So that's why, I thought. Mr. Davenport was using Chloe's return to calm Isabel down. I smiled slightly. "That's great." Clara remained silent through it all. Later, at the corner of the second-floor landing, she stopped me, her eyes searching my face. "Leo," she said, "how long are you going to drag this out? Don't you have any pride?" "Does pride ensure Isabel spares my parents?" I shot back. Clara said nothing. She had never once tried to put herself in my shoes. "Get divorced. You know I'll soon have full control of everything." "Congratulations," I replied flatly. "But I won't get a divorce. My wife needs me." As I tried to move past her, Clara clung to my hand. One step further, and Isabel, down in the living room, would see us. "Leo," she sighed, a madness clouding her eyes. "Don't make me do this." She slipped a hotel room key into my palm. It was hers. "Come if you want. I'm just going to do something good so you can meet Isabel again. Don't you love Chloe a lot? Guess what? If that's the case, can you still take care of her? Leo, we help each other out. Isn't that a good thing?" I was so furious I started shaking, my hand clutching the room key tightly. Clara whispered in my ear, "10 p.m., don't be late." She was in a good mood. Before leaving, she even helped adjust my collar, her fingers moving in a way that was both flirtatious and arrogant. Back in my room, I grabbed my phone and made a call. 10 p.m., there's only one shot at this. Think it through before you answer me. Before the show officially started taping, there was a live streaming segment. Isabel, who took very good care of herself, had quite a few fans there. Some habits, it seemed, never change. She had me running around doing things for her, telling her fans that I was a really filial son-in-law. She always spoke in a soft, gentle voice. It was all very harmonious. After the first impression segment, there was a 10-minute intermission, and we were put in the same green room. The side camera for the live stream was still on. The moment we were alone, Isabel started ripping into me. "Why did you give me cold water just now? Did you do it on purpose, making me drink that on camera, trying to make me mad?" "It was from the staff," I replied calmly. "It was the only thing they had. It's so hot today." "You have to talk back every single time I say something, don't you? How about preparing things before leaving home? You can't even serve people, right? How did you end up in this house?" At that, I suddenly looked up at her. "Don't act like you don't know how I got here. You threatened me with my parents' company, made me drop out of school to marry a person in a coma, and forced me to serve you and your daughter. Isn't that all you're doing, Isabel?" She wasn't used to me speaking up like that, and got incredibly angry immediately. "You ungrateful brat! That's what you deserve! Who asked my daughter to court you for so long, and you had the audacity to say no? She's my daughter! You should be happy just licking her boots." "Funny you should say that," I said, deliberately loud enough for the camera's microphone. "Clara is the older one. Why bother with Chloe? She only came first by 2 months and was just kept under wraps." The live chat must be going wild right now, I thought. I added more fuel to the fire. "So you went and told Lillian back then, right? Made her jump off that building on the very same day." "That woman was weak. Her death has nothing to do with me." Seeing her losing it, I closed my eyes for a second, then finally asked the question I'd waited years to ask. "What about David? How did he die?" Isabel visibly panicked, then yelled at me, "Who are you?" I slowly walked up to her. "David, your own brother. He got accepted to college when you didn't. You told your parents he wouldn't get far, and you took his spot. Later you got pregnant at college and left the kid with your brother, who was working the family farm. He raised him like his own son, and you cut all ties with him for good, until he got sick. He asked if you could do a bone marrow match. You didn't want to do it, but you went to his hospital anyway. You threatened him not to tell anyone his story. He begged you for help for the sake of the school thing, and said he wanted to live for his son. But you took that as a threat, afraid that the school and the son you abandoned would come back to haunt you. In the hospital, right after his chemotherapy, you found a way to fatally infect him." By then, my voice was shaky. I could never be with my dad in his final moments, always scrambling for medical costs. I had put a tiny second-hand camera high up in the corner of his room for when I needed to check on him. It caught Isabel's visit on camera the day my dad passed away. The camera broke right after I buried him, and it wasn't until one day, years later abroad, that I finally replayed that footage. She looked so pale she fell to the floor. You're... I crouched down next to her, my voice ruthless and blunt. "I'm the kid you ditched, and then forced to marry your own daughter." Isabel's eyes were wide with terror. She didn't know what to say. "This is fate, right? You forced it. I wonder, do you ever fear karma?" Someone in the live chat had already called the police. Isabel was dragged out, screaming like a wild animal. She couldn't look at me, and just kept screaming Chloe's name. Before they put her in the squad car, I whispered to her, "Mom." I had always called her that since the wedding. She had taken to it, but now she found it excruciating to hear, crying enough to flood a room, shaking her head furiously. "Cursed kid! This was your plan all along! You never cared for Chloe. I should have never left you with David." I wasn't mad. I just tried so hard to prove her wrong. "Haven't you seen how I care for her, Mom? I love her so much. I'm going to go see her now." Isabel was at her wit's end, terrified that I really did love Chloe, or worse, that I might hurt her for revenge. She was too flustered to speak, and had to be driven off while I headed for the hospital. Reaching Chloe's room, she was sprawled out on the bed, surrounded by hooks and tubes, just like every other day of our marriage. I touched her pale face and whispered, "You look so lovable like this." After graduating from a university in a foreign country, I met Chloe at my new school. Unlike Clara, her parents were always around, pampering her. She was all about flash, driving fast cars, and always being seen with different guys, as if she were collecting them. Until one day, she set her sights on me. I took my time, studying my father's journal, and I knew who Chloe was long before she made her bold move on me. I figured I would use her, climb higher, and deal with all those who had sinned against me. Chloe was just a means to an end. Until I saw that cheap plastic bracelet my neighbor Marcus once loved tucked away alongside her other expensive trophies. It had a name etched into the last bead, a name I had carved myself. "Do you know Marcus?" I asked her one day. Chloe flirtatiously wrapped her arms around my neck. "Nope, I don't." "A friend who studied abroad with you?" I dodged her attempt to kiss me and casually said, "If you don't know, never mind." Marcus had disappeared after lending all his savings to a spoiled rich girl he had met around that time. I hired a private detective. It turned out Chloe had gone back home during that period, played around for a bit, and then hurried back. It seemed like something had happened. She was even scolded by Mr. Davenport and stayed out of the social scene for quite a while after that. The results of the investigation made me unable to stand her, even as a stepping stone. Unless, of course, she was harmless and innocent after the car accident. We were once married. After my judgment, I will allow you a lifetime to slowly atone for your sins. With my video evidence and a nurse who worked at the hospital back then willing to testify, Isabel was quickly arrested for attempted murder. Mr. Davenport's overseas company faced major troubles, and he flew back in a hurry yesterday, reportedly collapsing from exhaustion. He had no time to deal with Isabel's matters. An overseas partner of mine called, asking how long I needed them to keep Mr. Davenport occupied. Ideally, until the trial ended and everything was exposed publicly, with no way to hide it. Clara found out about everything too late. She had spent the night messing around in a hotel room and was caught by Julian the next day. However, I wasn't the main character in the drama, as Julian had hoped. He had set up a dramatic scene to expose his brother-in-law and sister, only to be shocked himself. He entered the room with a camera, only to find his own cousin in bed with his fiancée. Those who fancy themselves as noble creators are often the most intolerant of stupidity. The meticulously set scene was wrecked. Julian lost control instantly. They fought, and their long friendship was over. And Clara, the center of their battle, watched the exposed private photos in disbelief and boiling rage. She immediately called to cancel the wedding. Julian, already nearly broken by the public backlash, snapped at her, adding insult to injury, and in his rage, he broke her leg. "Crippling yourself, did you really think you were something special? No skills to speak of. Your company shares were built up by my brother. Your leg was healed by me. Even beggars give a nod for charity, but you couldn't even get married." Clara clutched her bloody leg, shaking her head in despair, asking how he could be like this. "How do you expect me to take care of you like Leo did? He loved his cripple. I do not." When Clara was sent to the hospital, I happened to pass by as I was leaving Julian's room. She grabbed my hand from the stretcher. "Sorry," she choked out. I looked at her blankly, then pulled my hand away and walked out. I went back to the small, private island I had bought with years of savings. The sun is bright here, and the greenery is everywhere, like a paradise. I brought my adoptive mother's ashes and placed them at the best spot on the island to watch the sunset, building a little mound for her. She would have loved it. While watching the sunset on the beach, a boy would run out from the island's nursing home, slowly inching closer to me. Finally, he'd boldly come up, hold my face in his hands, squinting at the sunset, then turn his head to confirm. "Leo?" he'd hesitantly shout. My eyes stung. "I am Leo," I'd reply, but he couldn't hear me, nor did he wait for an answer, running off to play in the sand again. I had found my neighbor, Marcus, in a rough nursing home, both of his ears beaten deaf, starved to skin and bones. He didn't recognize anyone. I took him out immediately. The doctor said he had been physically and psychologically abused, and his mental state was irreparably damaged. On the island, I built him a small, private nursing home. He goes to the beach every day, waiting for me. He's progressed from initial hostility, hitting everyone who came close, to now, where he can come to me and call my name. The day Julian died in the hospital, I got the news while Marcus was pulling me over to see ants moving their homes in the bushes. "Leo, bring lots and lots of money. Treat Mom. Play with me. I'm scared. Where did Leo go?" He often rambles incoherently, suddenly triggered and hiding on the ground. I pieced together what he suffered from his scattered words, holding him in my arms in unbearable pain. Mr. Davenport and my adoptive parents visit the island often. I told them to treat it like a vacation spot. Slowly, Marcus has grown to trust them as well. We are like a family, watching sunsets on the beach together. Mr. Davenport said it reminded him of our first day at summer camp. Such a beautiful sunset. He asked Marcus if he still had the picture he took with his phone watch back then. Surprisingly, Marcus got angry. "What phone watch? That was so many years ago. I'm 18 now." He glanced at our parents, who were napping on loungers nearby, then quickly averted his gaze, muttering, "Old enough for romance talk. Date quickly, find someone." I had no interest in arguing with a kid. The signal on this island is weak, and I had no intention of prying into the affairs of the outside world anyway. Mr. Davenport brought me news. After Julian's death, Clara was back in a wheelchair, this time for good, from the severe beating. She could never walk again. Mr. Davenport had used every trick he knew trying to get Isabel out, but the case, stemming from the live broadcast incident, was too big. He had no way in. His company's stocks were hitting new lows, a far cry from what they once were. Julian was completely ousted from the entertainment industry and disowned by his family before he died. Proud people, falling from their pedestals covered in dirt. Mr. Davenport asked me what I thought about it all. I didn't have time to think. I was too busy sunbathing.